Well, we're back off to Mars, which can only mean we're dealing with Captain Taylor again. Although, like Ned Tedford this season, his little quirks and eccentricities have been toned down a lot. Now, that's not to say, by any stretch of the imagination, that Captain Lee Taylor is as irritating as Ned Tedford, because quite frankly, that's impossible. But he was one of those characters where you kind of go, mm-hmm. But this episode, he's pretty much down the middle, weighing up, what's important and what have you, and actually being very authoritative with Professor Kareem. And it's actually nice to see this kind of evolution and advancement of Captain Taylor, whereas he was, the forgetful, absent-minded, quirky space captain. This now you see, this is possibly a real guy in charge. This is the real Captain Taylor that's coming forward just to take charge and say, look, come on, you've been told multiple times not to do this, and here you are doing it again. And he really lays in to Professor Kareem, and it's good job on the writer's behalf, because I like the fact that with this show, the characters are not in the same place as they were from when they began. Like I said, with Ned Tedford, yeah, he's still irritating, but they've toned his quirks down. He's actually evolving and adapting as a character. Although this is not the same kind of analogy, but it's in the same context. If you look at the character of Will Smith from Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, although by the very last episode he still carries himself with the same wit, the same charisma, and the same type of moxie, if you were to look at the two performances side by side from when he first came in and to when the show ended, you're not seeing the same character. You are, but you're not. Because in the first episode, he's kind of disrespectful, says how he feels, doesn't really care too much, and he pushes a lot of Uncle Phil's buttons, which in the unfortunate case for Will, Uncle Phil had a lot of buttons. And it's in the same thing with James Avery's character. He had lightened up so much by the last episode. So if you were to look at the two performances of pilot episode Will Smith to last episode Will Smith, they're the same character, but they're not. And that is a sign of good writing, whereby the character is not the same by the time they get to the end of their journey. Now, that's not to say Captain Lee Taylor's at the end of his journey, nor is Ned Tedford, nor any of the other characters on this show at the end of their journeys. But they've all gone through journeys thus far where they're not the same person, nor the same type of authoritative figure by the time they get to where they're at. Because, it's been 3 years since this show started. Alan's still pretty much reckless and, and enthusiastic to do things, but he now approaches things with a little bit more caution. I think Virgil is probably a little more... He's probably a little bit more thoughtful than he was when the show started. Not to say that he wasn't before, but he's definitely a big thinker now because of the way he's said to think outside the box, which plays a big theme with this week, is look at the problem and think of every possible conceivable idea you can have to find your way out of it. Think outside the box. So that was really good to see. Which, ties back to the theme of, like I say, thinking outside the box by sealing the small pocket of air that they were in and releasing all the oxygen just so that they had breathable air, and so Professor Kareem could actually take his tanks off without actually suffocating, even though he'd been crushed a little bit. Nice to see Thunderbird 3 having a new pod vehicle in the Dragonfly pod, only until it got crushed. Although I like that they made it red, and that's another little thing. that I'm glad that the show has been doing. With the pod vehicles, they're not just having them the standard amber yellow, as they had been for the first 2 seasons. They actually are changing things up a little bit and actually putting different variants of colours on there, so I was actually pleased to see that. And the idea of using Thunderbird 3 as the mole, which it's not designed for that, but again, I know I'm going to sound like a broken record here, but you know, thinking outside of the box, thinking outside of your comfort zone, because the pod was trashed with the cave-in, and, you know, as Virgil said, you have to use the least of the bad options. So, yeah, I mean, writing was really on point this week, and this is one of the few things I can never put this show down for. The writing is always on point. They know what they're looking for, so that was great. Well, David and Rasmus as Virgil and Anna respectively knocked it out of the park once more. I mean, David Mencken in particular, he is basically Virgil now. Because the voice actor is a voice actor specialist, where he's able to do multiple roles and be able to distinguish them. You know, he knows what he's doing. Raz, there were times in the first season where you could see too much of a similarity, or hear too much of a similarity between the Scott and Alan voices, but I think by the end of season 1 he had it perfected, and this is no different, so I'm glad to see that. Rich Hall is good as Captain Taylor once more, and like I mentioned earlier, like Ned Tedford, they've toned this character down. Yeah, he's still forgetting the boys' names, but it's at a point now where it's like, you know what, it's not such a bad thing. Even Virgil said, you know, he stopped correcting him. He's just like, yeah, whatever. It's like, it's no big thing. At the end of the day, the mission is the most important thing. So that was good. Other guest star, Nabil Elohabai, I hope I pronounced that correctly, as Professor Kareem, performed well as a man who is looking for life on Mars. And that's kind of been a focal point with science now for, well, decades. You know, is there life on Mars? And I like that at the end of the episode you do actually see, you know, signs of life beneath the surface on an ocean of Mars. Part of me was wanting to see two green little Mysteron rings go by, but then be like, hey, come on. Has a different tone of show. I mean, it would have been fun if you could actually have the two worlds of Thunderbirds and Captain Scarlet acknowledge each other, but at the same time it could be a complete tonal, you know, a complete tone shift. Because Scarlet was a much darker show compared to Thunderbirds. Whereas Thunderbirds, at its core, it's very light-hearted, whereas Scarlet, there was something quite, you know, something a bit dark and, you know, there was something creepy. But then that's the whole point. I think insidious was the word I was looking for. So that would have been intriguing, because the Mysterons did like to sort of make moves that you'd sort of think, okay. But yeah, long story short, Nabil performed excellently, and I hope they have him back again on the show, either reprising his role or another role. You know, you never know. But yeah, enjoyed his performance. You know, I've said so many times on this show that one of the key strengths of what they do with regards to animation is the underwater rescues and the space missions, and this is no exception. I really love the attention to detail when they went to Mars, and by the same token, the attention to detail with the sandstorm, which, if you recall from Season 2's Grandma Turismo, the cinematography that they did for that episode with the sandstorm, when you see Thunderbird 2 immersed in said sandstorm, that's some of the best cinematography work I've ever seen. And this week is no exception. So, Weta Workshop, you earned your paycheck and then some, again. Jeff's pink flamenco shirt was mentioned, which is a nod to the character's apparel from the original series. I get the distinction that either that was just thrown in just to sort of remind people, hey, we haven't forgotten about Jeff, or they're slowly going to start building towards something. What? I don't know. But reading the synopsis for Season 3, they did say it would be, at one stage, it would be their most personal rescue yet. That can mean to me only one thing. Jeff. So, we'll see. Well, for my final thought, it was a decent, well-written episode this week, with everyone turning in a good performance showing how the characters have improved and evolved. And it was good to hear Jeff Tracy mentioned once more this week, so it does lead me to think, where is it going to move into? Because we're 6 episodes in, we're 7 away from the mid-season finale. I know we're jumping ahead of the gun a little bit, but you gotta be thinking they've got something pretty special lined up. I'm hoping we'll get a Season 4. And, I've mentioned this before. Say we do get Jeff back. What is it going to go into with regards to the setup at the headquarters? Is Jeff going to resume his role as the leader of International Rescue? Or is he going to sit and observe from the sidelines, seeing how Scott handles the situation, and then either just stay in the background? When I say stay in the either stay in the background and just interact with the boys after the mission, or is he actually going to look at Scott and learn things from him? I mean, I don't know. But at the moment, Scott's doing alright, just being in charge, just doing double duty, being the team response leader, and, the leader of International Rescue at the moment. But like I say, well-written episode this week. I can't really find any faults with it, so yeah. That's another home run done for Thunderbirds our go, and until next mission, good night from the night.